Hello everyone, I'm Brazen Eagle, and thank you for joining me here. So today we have some peculiar information from CNN. So STDs are very, very sexist, and women are the losers, don't ya know? Here's why. America, good old America, is in the middle of an epidemic of sexually transmitted infections. And when it comes to heterosexual transmission, it's hitting women the hardest. But why? Simply put, because STDs are biologically and psychosocially sexist at all levels. That's right. Diseases or infections are discriminating against women instead of men. Said Dr. Hunter Hansfield, a professor emeritus of medicine at the University of Washington Center for AIDS and STD, who has studied STDs for 40 years. Women bear the largest burden of these diseases, not because they choose to do so, but because STDs are somehow sexist, agreed Dr. Edward Hook, co-director of the Center for Social Medicine and Sexually Transmitted Diseases at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Good old chlamydia and ages-old gonorrhea, for example, are the two, or at least two, of the leading preventable causes of infertility and ectopic pregnancies in the U.S. and on Earth. Easily transmitted, but more dangerous. One reason STDs are sexist. In heterosexual pairings, they are more readily transmitted from the man to the woman than from the woman to the man. It sounds like, regardless, it sounds like they're both carriers. So at any one exposure, a susceptible woman is more likely to catch it than a susceptible man, Hansfield said. That's because the lining of the vagine is thinner and more delicate than the skin on a peen. So it's easier for bacteria and viruses to penetrate and take hold. Once there, the moist environment of the vagine is perfect, just perfect, for growth. And once the infection is acquired, it could be more severe or more damaging to a woman's health. It could be, or it could be less. Take herpes, for example, because of the nature of the female genitalia. If you get the herpes, there's likely multiple painful blisters, Hansfield said. For men, they might get a few blisters. They could have a lot of blisters. You really don't know. It depends on the case. Another example is HPV. It causes cervical cancer, which can be deadly unless caught early. Yes, men can get penile cancer from HPV, Hansfield said, but at about 1/100th the rate that women get cervical cancer from HPV. According to the World Cancer Research Fund, cervical cancer is the 8th most common cancer in the world, hidden in the female experience. Yet another reason STDs are sexist. Symptoms are often more nonspecific in women and can be mistakenly written off as typical female annoyance. If a woman has a little burning on urination, maybe it was just too much time on the exercycle, maybe the underwear was a little too tight, but maybe there were also some spicy foods for dinner, said Hook. Maybe there's a little bit of a discharge, a little itch. Yuck, Hansfield said. It's easy for a woman to think it's a yeast infection and self-treat, while the chlamydia is climbing up into her fallopian tube. Sounds great. If there are any signs at all, many women and men with STDs never have symptoms and have no idea they are infected. But it's getting harder to diagnose. The sexist nature of STDs can even follow a woman into the doctor's office. If a guy goes into a doctor's office with a urethral discharge, Hansfield said, there are only a very small handful of things that can cause it, and most of these are STDs. Any half-trained medical school student can diagnose it and accurately get it treated. A woman's discharge or uncomfortable urination, however, could be due to a number of reasons, including a urinary tract infection. Doctors often need urine samples or must swab the vagine and send samples to a lab for analysis, which might take days to come back and are sometimes inconclusive. Even the most sophisticated expert clinicians end up scratching their heads about the cause of 20 or 30% of women's vaginal discharge, Hansfield said, and then, sometimes, it's more than the STD that's sexist. My wife is an OBGYN, and I am an infectious disease physician who specializes in STDs, so there's been a lot of talk about this issue at my house, Hook said. Once my doctor went to see her doctor, and at the end of the exam, the doctor said, "Okay, you're good to go." Now, for over 10 years, it's been recommended that every woman aged 24 or less who is sexually active be tested for chlamydia once a year. I'd probably say in general everyone should probably get tested, but I understand there's costs associated, but data shows that it occurs in less than half of women in our country, he explained. So my daughter said, "Well, did you do a chlamydia test?" And that elicited a lecture from the doctor on why she didn't need to have sex to please the boys. there's definitely no narrative being pushed or any sort of bias is coming from that sentence. But anyways, most cases ever recorded, cases of gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis, have reached the highest levels ever recorded according to a recent report from the U.S. Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Combined, they make up a total of 2.4 million infections that were diagnosed and reported just in the last year alone, the CDC epidemiologist Elizabeth Toron told CNN when the report came out. The latest numbers show youth, especially females, are most at risk. The CDC estimates people aged 15 to 24 acquire half of all new STD cases, while 1 in 4 sexually active adolescent girls has an STD. These numbers, astounding as they are, probably represent only half of all STD cases because they are not uniformly reported to the CDC. Hook said, some of the increase in numbers may be due to new and improved tests that are more sensitive to spotting disease, as well as the testing of orifices doctors ignored in the past. With the popularity of course, the good old anal or the good old oral sex, we must now look at what we call extragenital sites of sexual exposure, both the throat and the good old rectum, Hook said. Another key reason for the skyrocketing numbers is a drop in condom use. That trend is a critical mistake, says experts, because barrier protection is one of the only ways, besides abstinence, to keep these types of diseases at bay. What's not a reason for the high STDs in women, experts say, is the sexist attitudes that women who get these diseases must somehow be more sexually promiscuous than men. Well, those don't sound like experts to me. They don't understand anything, apparently, at least concerning social behavior. But there are 1.7 million cases of chlamydia, good old chlamydia, in the U.S., Hansfield said, and we know that rates are higher in women than men. I wonder why. And we also know that more than half of the women who get infected with chlamydia had only a single sexual partner in the last year. So you're telling me these females actually share the same guy? It's almost as if there's a behavior that is instinctual in females. Now, anyways, what should women do about this? Take away the guilt. That's right. Take away that STD shame. I think that most people believe that the only people who get sexually transmitted infections are people who are somehow taking risks and doing wrong things, Hook said, and that's clearly not the case. Actually, it is clearly the case. You gotta know your body, though. Learn your genitals, Hansfield said. Learn what's normal for you, and be aware of any new oddities, and don't be afraid to check them out, which is actually really, really great advice. Any new or unexplained vaginal discharge or change in the character of vaginal discharge, including odor, requires professional evaluation, Hansfield said, adding that any unexplained genital sore, lump or swollen gland in the groin, low abdominal or pelvic pain, or change in menstrual pattern are all reasons to visit a doctor. Spotting between periods and spotting after sex is high risk of an inflamed cervix due to STDs, Hansfield said. Many women have symptoms like this from time to time anyway, so it's a bit frustrating. But you'll know if that is abnormal for you. And, of course, get tested often. Everyone owes it to themselves to make sure they're sexually healthy, and they shouldn't hesitate to be treated for these infections, Hook said. Look at it this way. If your tests are positive, the good news is that you found the infection, and it can be treated before it causes you problems or gets transmitted to others. Well, hopefully within time. But, there you have it, friends. Diseases are sexist because it fits their narrative. From reading this article, of course it is from CNN, it sounds like women are victims. They cannot be at fault. Things just happen to women, and women didn't choose for this to happen. But let's be real, they did. This article, of course, the title is misleading. STDs are sexist against women. That's, like I said, that's a little bit misleading. So what is sexist, or what is sexism? Well, sexism, at least according to Wikipedia, is prejudice or discrimination based on a person's sex or gender. But what's the definition of discrimination then? In human social behavior, discrimination is prejudiced treatment or consideration of, or making a distinction towards, a person based on the group, class, or category to which the person is perceived to belong. So you telling me, CNN, that sexually transmitted diseases are noticing the difference between men and women and are choosing to attack women instead of men? Are you kidding me, man? It's almost as if that there is a bias in this article, but you know what? Let's continue little bit further. So Dr. Hook, he's one of the doctors within this article, right? He has a daughter, and she asked her own doctor if he did a chlamydia test on her. Now, the doctor then told her that she didn't need to have sex to please boys. Really? Women don't want sex and only use it to please men? Do you not know that women can want sex just as much as men? They don't use sex just to please boys or men. This person, this doctor, whoever this is, doesn't really understand female nature. But, like this article says, STDs have reached the highest levels ever recorded in our history. One of the reasons for the increase of STDs is potentially the drop in condom use. This is, of course, one of the few ways to potentially prevent disease or even pregnancy. The next sentence, though, is quite laughable. What's not a reason for the high rates of STDs in women, experts say, is the sexist attitudes that women who get these diseases must somehow be more sexually promiscuous than men. So these so-called experts don't understand male and female nature and behavior. They don't know what we know. Have you heard of Briefot's law? Around 80% of women go for approximately the top 20% of men. 28% of men in 2018 between the ages of 18 and 30 reported no sex in the past year, compared, of course, to the 18% of women. Now, I understand that this doesn't necessarily report the entire picture, but it's a good indicator that things might not be equal among the sexes. There might be a difference between men, or there might be a reason why men don't have sex and women generally get more sex than men, and how women are reporting higher rates of STDs. Now, I could further make the case here that, in this paragraph, that there are 1.7 million cases of chlamydia in the U.S., Hansfield said, and we know that rates are higher in women than men. And we also know more than half of the women who get infected with chlamydia only had a single sexual partner in the last year. And you know what? He isn't necessarily wrong. You know why? Women would prefer to share a top-performing male than for each woman to have a male partner to themselves. Women don't want a man who they see as their inferiors. Women would rather share the top dog. Why do you think STDs are growing in number, especially for women? It's because they're sharing the men who are actually infected to begin with. Now, of course, unless women are raped or sexually assaulted or things like that, then women who have these diseases and infections, and of course things similar, are responsible, absolutely responsible for them. Women take on the potential consequences when they engage in sexual behavior and activities. This, of course, includes potentially acquiring an STD or, of course, becoming pregnant. Like this article mentioned before, though, condoms could prevent stuff like this, but condoms are not a guarantee. But do you know what is a guaranteed way to prevent STDs or pregnancies? Like this article also says, abstinence. Abstinence is 100% effective in preventing these types of diseases as well as pregnancy. Now, some people will really get angry and disagree, but I argue that it's not abstinence that's a problem. It's the will to enforce or maintain abstinence. That is very weak. Abstinence always works every single time. You can't get pregnant or infected if you don't have sex. I mean, that just doesn't happen. If women don't want the potential consequences of engaging in sexual activities, and this goes for men too, then the most logical conclusion is to not engage in those activities. The will to enforce abstinence, of course, is very, very weak. But, I'm going to finish this article off with the last little paragraph here. What women should do. Dr. Hook, he's not a very bright man when it comes to female nature. He says to take away the guilt. He says that, I think that most people believe that the only people who get sexually transmitted infections are people who are somehow taking risks and doing wrong things, he says. And that's clearly not the case. Oh my goodness, that's a lie. Dr. Hook, why are you lying on CNN? Okay, that makes sense to be on CNN and to lie, but you are taking a risk if you engage, really in any activity, but especially in sexual activity. If you don't want to win stupid prizes, then don't play stupid games. If there's a chance that you could get an infection from sexual activities, then don't act surprised if you got a diseased prize. There's always risks in whatever you do. And when you engage in sexual activity, you take on the risk of someone, maybe you or someone else, getting pregnant or getting a disease. That's just a consequence of engaging with these activities. But, you know, that's all the time that we have today. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Brazen Eagle, and I hope you have a great, disease-free day.